Enthusiastic, let's not disappoint them, Perseus said. Ivaisa didn't speak, but she also didn't turn and leave. Then, Helen embraced Perseus warmly and gave Luna a passionate kiss that made her blush. As expected, Sister Helen is not reserved at all. Luna felt like she had been tricked. She needs to work harder too. Chapter 64: The Feast of Wolves. The person responsible for picking up and dropping off Luna was none other than Bebe, whom she had met once before, a kind, earnest, and adorable werewolf girl who was also simple-minded. He might be a little older than Perseus, but he always acts very mature, though he is indeed very caring. Upon seeing Perseus and the others, she paused for a moment, then beamed with joy. Helen Een was someone she had met before, and the two became fast friends instantly upon meeting again, like sisters. Helen Een is a woman with a deep and cunning mind. Perseus and she were old acquaintances, so they exchanged only a few pleasantries, and there was no need for further words. Ivaisa, however, was a complete stranger to Bibi. Even when Bibi took the initiative to speak to her enthusiastically, she wouldn't even nod in greeting, but just stood next to Perseus with her eyes lowered. Bibi wasn't angry. Instead, he couldn't help but glance at her a few more times. The look of emotion in Ivaisa's eyes when she was fortunate enough to witness a rare treasure was just an everyday occurrence. The group boarded the carriage and set off. To maintain balance while driving, the load on one side cannot be too heavy, otherwise everyone would be squeezed together. Ivaisa naturally wanted to sit next to Perseus, as he strongly desired. Leaving her alone and all alone was something he couldn't tolerate in any way. Therefore, even Luna could no longer sit on Perseus's lap, and she and Helen sat in the main seats. Fortunately, the two women are now on very good terms, chatting and laughing together, so they don't feel lonely. Sitting opposite, Bebe also leaned towards Luna and the others, occasionally chiming in with a few enthusiastic words, which would then make the three girls burst into laughter, a laugh that melted everyone's heart. Bibi would occasionally steal glances at Ivaisa. Although her seemingly subtle movements were actually quite obvious, Ivaisa did not react at all. But Ivaisa was acting very strangely today. She would occasionally lift the curtain of the sedan chair and look out the window, and the frequency was getting higher and higher. There was also a rare sense of panic and desolation in her eyes. Perseus knew what she wanted to see, and what she was afraid to see. A charred ruin. The ruins of the Ephron family's villa in the capital are located on the only way to Luna's manor. When Helen came last time, she even secretly pointed it out to him. Actually, Perseus recognized her even without her pointing her out. Everyone in the capital knows him. That mansion, which many considered even more sacred than the imperial palace, was engulfed in flames by the sudden bloodshed that night, becoming a unique tombstone. Alternatively, a warning sign. This prime location, blessed with excellent feng shui, will remain vacant indefinitely, serving as a reminder to all who look upon it of the consequences of opposing the emperor. Despite Ivaisa's complex and conflicted feelings, as the carriage moved forward, the desolate state of her former home was cruelly revealed before her eyes. Ivaisa's eyes widened involuntarily, and her breathing became rapid. Of the other three girls, only Helen noticed her change, but she ignored it, focusing on continuing to chat and laugh with Luna and Bibi. Perseus grasped Ivaisa's tightly clenched fist, feeling her body tremble uncontrollably. The carriage sped along, and everything in sight flashed by. Ivaisa closed her eyes tightly, but no tears fell. Only her eyelashes were slightly damp. Perseus continued to hold her hand as if nothing had happened. Suddenly, she loosened her fist and took his hand. Perseus looked over and could only see Ivaisa's indifferent profile. Perseus smiled silently, straightening his back and looking straight ahead, just like her. The carriage stopped. We had arrived at a familiar place that evoked a sense of nostalgia. "Dad, I'm home!" Luna yelled excitedly and jumped off the carriage. Kutu and a large group of werewolves were already waiting there. Upon seeing the adorable Luna, they couldn't help but smile, creating a warm and harmonious atmosphere. Perseus then emerged, accompanied by two women. The entire arena was frozen solid, and the smiles on the faces of the wolves, including Kutu, were frozen. "My God, this guy has another woman, and she's much prettier than the other one." Until a wolf couldn't help but utter a sigh that almost made Helen Een instantly turn evil. Helen became anxious, eager to find out which mongrels had said those words. Perseus then went up to Curtius and greeted him politely. "I apologize, Lord Kutu, for our hasty visit again. Dad, I invited them. They're all my friends. How about it? Happy. Luna proudly declared that her father was so happy he wanted to kill someone. Of course I'm happy that you've made so many friends, Kutu said, his gaze sweeping over the three of them in turn, lingering a little longer on Ivisa's face. Don't stand outside, come inside and sit down. Although surprised by the guest's visit, Cthulhu generously and gladly received them. The other werewolves naturally had no objections. Not only did they have no objections, but many werewolves were even quite enthusiastic about Perseus because of his performance last time. Helen also chatted with them in a very friendly manner, but in order to find the owner of the voice from earlier, she greeted each wolf. Ivisa made the wolves restrain themselves, and everyone, regardless of age or gender, became extra careful about their words and actions. Perseus saw the black-headed man again among the wolves. Blackhead was also secretly watching Ivisa. This time, no one teased him. His face grew redder and redder, and he fainted again, causing the other wolves, who were unaware of what was going on, to panic for a while. Perseus's lips twitched slightly. This kid is such a scoundrel at such a young age. Dinner time arrived quickly. The huge restaurant had 2 long tables, which were filled with all kinds of main dishes. Not only were there no green vegetables to be seen, but chicken, duck, and fish were also rare. Large chunks of meat dominated the table. Just looking at Perseus made his pancreas and gallbladder ache. Despite living in the bustling capital, this tribe still maintains the dietary habits of the jungle, and their cooking methods are quite rough. All meat dishes, whether boiled or roasted, were served with only a tiny bit of salt. Some were even still alive, still bleeding. Generally speaking, young and strong werewolves with good teeth prefer meat that is undercooked or even completely raw. So Perseus and the others had no choice but to sit at the same table as the elderly, women, and children. The meat here is also hard to eat, but at least it won't give you diarrhea. To avoid embarrassing their host, the 3 of them reluctantly ate large mouthfuls, but it was very difficult. Kuta walked over to Perseus with a wine glass in his hand. If you don't like the food, you don't have to force yourself. If I had known you were coming, I would have hired a few human cooks. Please don't mind us, Lord Kutu. We're used to the food. Perseus ate the meat in big mouthfuls until his cheeks ached. Ah! Kuta couldn't help but burst into laughter. I told you not to force yourself. Come on, have a sip of wine to soothe your nerves. He handed over the enormous goblet that Perseus needed 2 hands to hold steady. It was filled to the brim with murky liquid, exuding a complex fruity aroma and a strong alcoholic scent. Our tribe's traditional brew is not as refined as yours. We don't sell it. We only use it for our own drinking and to entertain distinguished guests. These are distinguished guests. What more is there to say? If he doesn't drink it, no one will recognize him as their son-in-law in the future. Perseus took a big gulp, and although he knew it would be choking, he almost coughed up his lungs. Although this wine is brewed from wild fruits from the mountains, even I wouldn't dare drink it so fast. You rascal. Kutu patted him on the back, took the wine glass, and swaggered away triumphantly. Perseus silently wiped his mouth and looked at Ivisa. She conjured an ice knife and fork with water magic and ate slowly and elegantly. The mage Wolfsbane, who was at the same table with the elderly, women, and children, had just witnessed Ivisa conjure up that set of cutlery in an instant, and he stood there dumbfounded, looking utterly bewildered. Do you want some too? Ivisa asked Perseus. I want the one you have. Ivisa didn't waste any words and handed him her knife and fork, then changed her own. Honey, I want one too. Helen couldn't take it anymore. A person can pretend about anything, but it's hard to pretend when it comes to food. It's okay. I'll feed you after I finish this bite. Perseus hurriedly cut off a piece of meat, put it in his mouth with his fork, and even licked the fork without thinking. It's sweet. Helen didn't mind at all and happily welcomed Perseus's feeding. I want one too. Luna, on the other side, couldn't sit still any longer. Then, in full view of everyone, she skillfully sat on Perseus's lap, waiting hopefully to be fed. The entire room fell silent. Luna smiled shyly under the gaze of many eyes. I've gotten used to it at the academy. The pack of wolves silently looked at Kutu, who was at the head of the pack. Kutu remained silent, tilting his head back and gulping down large mouthfuls of strong liquor. Chapter 65, The Wonderful Method of Inducing Sleep. That night, Perseus lay alone in bed, feeling somewhat sentimental. After the meal, They naturally stayed overnight. The Kuta people were indeed honest and very hospitable. What surprised Perseus even more was that this man knew Ivisa's background, yet he didn't react in any particular way. It's important to know that even now, as things have calmed down, there are still many people who regard Ivisa as a plague that brings trouble. The Dog Emperor said it wasn't their fault for being stupid, but rather that they were overly cautious. But when it comes to this kind of issue, you can never be too cautious, can you? Since he was already there, he figured he might as well make the best of it. No one had said much, so he didn't bother to be suspicious. The newly built manor had many empty rooms. Even though Kuta brought the entire tribe with him, half of the rooms were still empty. There was enough room for Perseus, Helen, and Ivisa, each. Luna had originally invited the three of them to stay in a room, but Kuta jokingly rejected the idea, saying the room was too small and the four of them would be too crowded. In fact, Luna's room is even bigger than Helen's. It would probably be cramped for 40 people to live there. Who are you keeping an eye on, you old man? Anyway, Perseus has no immediate plans to harm Luna, especially since this is on her turf. After chatting with Luna for a while, the three of them went back to their respective rooms. Come to think of it, he hasn't slept alone in a long time. Even in Winnie's apartment that day, he could clearly hear the drunk woman snoring on the ceiling, making it impossible for him to feel lonely. Today, however, it is quiet here with only the chirping of unknown insects coming from outside the window, which is very relaxing. However, the pleasure of being alone was shattered before it could last long. Someone silently pushed the door open and entered, then closed it again. Bathed in moonlight, Ivisa pulled off her hair tie, and her long, snow-white hair cascaded down like a waterfall, making her look like a moonlit fairy. Her stunning beauty was breathtaking. Perseus knew someone would come, but she never expected it to be her, the seemingly least likely person. What's wrong? Perseus asked softly. I can't sleep. Ivisa stood expressionless by the door, not approaching. That was awesome. This arrogant, spoiled brat. Perseus remained calm, but couldn't help but chuckle to himself. Apart from that one night, he basically spent the nights with Ivisa during this period. Although he spent most of his time on the ceiling, he could only look at such a beautiful woman. Even if I managed to get into bed with her, I still couldn't touch the hem of her clothes. But even so, the feeling of having someone by your side is just different, right? Compared to lying there all alone in the dark, feeling like you're the only person left in the whole world. How about you sleep in my bed and I sleep on the ceiling? Perseus offered quite readily. Need not. After a moment of silence, Ivisa spoke slowly. She came over, took off her shoes, got into bed, took off her coat, and lay down with her back to Perseus. I feel a bit cold. Can I have a hug? Perseus leaned closer and asked cautiously. Don't push your luck. Ivisa said coldly. I promise it's just a hug. She fell silent. Silence means permission. Perseus didn't care about anything else. Even if he got kicked off the bed again, that was a problem for later. He wanted to hug her first. Perseus reached out his slightly trembling hand and gently embraced her slender waist, burying his face in her loose hair. That feels so good. This treatment is unprecedented. It seems that a high level of obedience makes all the difference. However, he dared not test the extent to which she could obey him tonight. Otherwise, we'll end up with nothing, and it won't be worth the loss. You smell so good, my darling, Perseus whispered. Ivisa still ignored him. After a while, Perseus reluctantly released her temporarily, propped himself up, and wanted to see her expression. Ivisa stared straight ahead expressionlessly, her eyes still gleaming even in the shadows. However, it's a bit too bright. Those were tears. Are you still upset about what you saw before? Perseus's heart tightened, and he lay back down, continuing to hold her and bury his face in her hair. No, her cold voice was somewhat hoarse. Let bygones be bygones. We can't change the past. We can only focus on the future, Perseus said softly. I know. If you know that, then go to sleep obediently. I can't sleep. Then what will it take for you to fall asleep? She stopped talking again. Honestly, isn't this putting him in a difficult position? He was forced to risk losing such supreme enjoyment and try to find a way to put her to sleep. So the hand that had been quietly resting on her waist began to slowly move upwards. This time, she did not resist, and even after he had succeeded, Perseus was still somewhat incredulous. Yes, it's a little smaller than Helen's, but size doesn't determine everything. Baby, you smell so good, Perseus said again, in a very confused voice.